Good morning. This is Bill from Curious Cars and Auto House of Naples on a muggy, miserable, crappy, shitty Florida, whatever the hell day it is. I mean, it's just bad. It really is. Birds. Anyway, it's muggy. My glasses are fogging up again. And again, it's June. I mean, this isn't going to stop now until maybe October, but even then kind of unlikely. I mean, the first time you can be assured of a decent month is November, so I don't know how many months away that is, maybe 2. Obviously a lot more than that, but either way, we're in for a long hot summer, and I'm not looking forward to it. That said, I'm not going to get into the birds other than that one that just landed on the roof. I'm not going to get into the goats because, again, they just haven't been around and I haven't seen them and I don't feel like going to track them down this morning. Instead, we are going to leap with both feet into this car to do what I am going to call a quick review, I promise you. And I know there's some guys who like the long ones. That's great. But, you know, they really have sort of eked out over the last few months into these big, long things. And that said, I've done this car or one like it so many times that I can link to a more in-depth review in the comments or in the description section. So I just wanted to do a very quick review of this particular car and this particular series, and that is the R129 Roadster from Mercedes-Benz. This being a 1990 model, the first year of it, which is why I wanted to do this car. And I'll tell you what, it is revolting to me. I can't think of a better word other than disgusting, sickening, you name it, that this is now a classic car. I mean, not even like an aspiring classic car. This is a classic car. I mean, this thing is 31 years old. Not only could it vote, it would probably be balding at this stage if it were a living, breathing person or, you know, a corporation. But it just is unbelievable to me because, honestly, it just feels like, I mean, I won't say like they just came out. I mean, that's obviously not true. I mean, I graduated high school in 1989. This is a 90 model, so it was 1 year after that. And that was a long time ago in Bill world. I'm now a middle-aged, balding guy, but it still just doesn't feel like a vintage car to me. I remember when they were new. I remember when they were sitting on the showroom floor. I remember being wowed by them on the street. And it's difficult when you start seeing cars I can't say that you think of as current, but you know, you don't think of like a 57 Chevy or something, but when you start seeing cars that are contemporary to you and now considered classics by the world. So anyway, that's why I wanted to get into this. And this is the nicest one that I've seen in a very, very long time. 1990 with only 25,000 miles in what I think is a signature color combination for. I know silver is Mercedes color, but I think the white with the blue is a very handsome setup for this car. This particular one is a 300 SL, which means it has the M104 engine, the inline 6-cylinder. Not the most desirable at all by collectors, but does have its place and does share the lineage of the first SL, which we'll very quickly get into. And of course the SL, which I believe stands for, you know what, I mean, I can't believe that I've gone through this. I believe it stands for super light. That was a big debate for a long time, whether it was sport light or super light, and I could have this asked backwards, but I think it stands for super light because of some find maybe a few years ago in the Mercedes archives of when they were putting the first one together. So that was settled. As to whether or not my addled brain remembered it correctly, that's another issue. But the argument between sport and super has indeed been settled, despite what anyone might tell you. And this car replaced the R107 model, which was truly one of the most successful and prolific models in Mercedes-Benz history, never mind just SL history. They sold a shitload of Mercedes R107s, which ran from roughly 1973 in the US all the way through 1989 until it was replaced by this car. And for many, many people my age or above, the R107 is one of the first cars you might think of when you think of the word Mercedes-Benz or the words. It's just one of those cars that was absolutely prolific. But it did stem from a few years of SLs, which are a very famous car, starting with the 300 SL Gullwing. If you remember that car, one of the most collectible and expensive cars in the world today, an incredible work of styling, absolutely gorgeous vehicle, iconic enough to actually have been painted and commemorated by Andy Warhol and many others in pop culture. So a very, very special car, that 300 SL Gullwing, which was essentially a street-going Le Mans car that Mercedes put together. It was Max Hoffman was the guy who sort of started first importing Mercedes to the United States in a way that they became mainstream, and he actually turned out to be Dustin Hoffman's uncle. But anyway, Max Hoffman was instrumental in getting the 300 SL Gullwing into the hands of Americans in a street version from the Mercedes-built Le Mans version, and it went down as becoming one of the most prolific cars of all time. Prolific, there I go with that word. I just zero in on a word, and I just keep using it, even if it doesn't address the situation at all. Anyway, it became one of the most fabled cars in Mercedes history. At the same time, they came out with a 190 SL, which for many, many years was considered a dog. It was a four-cylinder Mercedes. It did have some of the styling look of the 300 SL, but none of the power and none of the panache. And they were relative bargains for decades. And then very recently, well, if you call 2 decades ago recently, they started to go up, and then they skyrocketed, and now you can't touch a 190 SL for anything reasonable. There's shocking amounts of money. Nothing, of course, like the 300, but still very, very expensive cars. That 190 was replaced by the 113 chassis. And, all these numbers are kind of a thing that Mercedes guys get into. Oh, the 113, the 107, the 126. Yeah, it just is what it is. It's how we distinguish them, because there's a lot of different this is an R129, but in the R129 series, there was a 300 SL, a 500 SL, an SL 500, an SL 320, an SL 600, and then a few AMG things. So you have to be able to name one thing that covers all those different models, and that is the chassis number, which is the R129. But anyway, the 190 SL replaced by the Pagoda, which, did have a lot of success in the United States. It did evolve from the first one, the 230 SL, which was very sporty, through 1971-72 when we came out with the 280 SL, which is much more of a touring car, heavier. It shared everything body-wise and looks-wise with the 230, but was a more substantial touring car. And then that was replaced by the R107, which again is a car that a lot of people are going to know, and that ran an incredible amount of time, again from 1973 all the way through 89. So you're talking, 16 years of production. They made a bunch of them. But by the time 89 rolled around, it was old, and it just seemed old compared to other cars on the road. It was like a new vintage Mercedes, and this car had to replace it. And replacing what's considered an incredibly entrenched classic is just not that easy. Ask the RX-8 how that went for it. So it's a very tough thing to do, and Mercedes did bat it out of the park. And partially because the car was designed under the auspices of Bruno Sacco. He sort of headed up the design team, one of the greatest Mercedes designers of all time. It was based on a W124 sedan, the underpinnings of the car, and it took the two-seat Roadster thing to a new level that heretofore hadn't been seen. Okay, very briefly, what's a Roadster versus a convertible? Basically, a Roadster has 2 seats, a cloth or a hard soft top, which this one does have a removable hard top and a soft top, and has some semblance of sportiness to it. A convertible generally has 4 seats and is not really considered a very sporty car. So, it can be, but in the style of the Austin Healey or the MGB or, even the Corvette, that is what a two-seat Roadster is all about. There has to be some sport credibility to it, and this one very much did have it. It's considered by many, and frankly myself included, to be really the last classic Mercedes-Benz that was made, at least in the traditional style of incredibly high build quality, over-engineering, and wood, nuts, bolts, and leather. That is what this car was all about, and it ran all the way through 2002 and was replaced by the R230, which was the second Mercedes folding hardtop. The SLK had come out a few years before and was the first, but the R230 just hasn't lived up to snuff in comparison. The R1, this car, they actually trade at a higher rate, more valuable than the car that replaced it, despite the much higher sticker price of the R230 and the much more technological advancements that it had. It just isn't considered to be built in the traditional Mercedes way. Many of them have been problematic to own, and these cars, as a result, have gone up in value even faster than the 107s did before them. I did say I would make this review short, so I will continue to. So anyway, you can see this one has gray cladding on the bottom, a light gray cladding. That's kind of a Bruno Sacco feature. They did minimize that in later years. The car went through at least one facelift, arguably two, and got a variety of different engines. To me, the early ones are much more Mercedes-like. I think in the collector world, the later ones are considered to be more desirable. But to me, the early ones, I think Mercedes kind of cheapened the content in the later ones. They weren't as frivolous with parts as this one was. I mean, they did simplify the interiors and exteriors, and I think they made them a little bit less expensive to produce. So even if the latter versions are considered to be more desirable, I do think the early versions represent a classic Mercedes a little bit better. And the early ones have really started to go up in value, like this one, in no small part because being 30 years old, they can now get imported into Germany and other parts of Europe without tax. And Germany is a lot like Massachusetts in that the cars turn to powder from rust after a while. Not everyone knows that, so the Germans come over to the United States to find really rust-free examples to bring back. Additionally, being the temperate weather that they have, the climate, not as many convertibles get sold like they do here. America certainly has to be the largest convertible market, or at least was when this car was out, and that means there's more of them here to choose from. But the lights in the front, really, really attractive. The headlight wipers, very cool. Nice lower air dam with fog lights. Long and lean front end. You can see it's quite stretched out in the front and very stubby in the back, the way a sporty car should be. Nice little vents behind the front wheels. These are a variation of the classic Mercedes-Benz flat wheels, but were 16-inch, which the first flats were 15. And again, I think these original SL wheels look better and look more classic than the stuff that came out after it. The car has all original paint. It had a pinstripe on it, which I didn't want to remove, even if I don't like it, because it's very well done. But it is a time machine, this particular thing. And it's been a lot of fun to drive because it reminds me of what it was like when it was new. It's tight, it's together, you know, when this thing first pulled up, and I was a kid, or, you know, a young man anyway, you know, you have to remember that the 107 that it replaced had these weird little tools that you used to spend 7 minutes lowering the soft top, and it was a pain in the ass. And this thing, all of a sudden, it's got an electro-hydraulic system where you press a button, and it folds everything down underneath the hard tonneau cover in just a few seconds. And when you would do that on the street in this car, I mean, people would gather. It's common now. Even your average Toyota might have a system like that. But back then, it was radical, and it drew a crowd, and it was pretty cool stuff. So, all right, well, let's real quick. Again, quick review, so we're going to get right into this thing. Let's go under the hood. Still has that bank vault sound on the closing doors. Okay, so here it is. This is an M104 engine. You could get the M103, which was a 16 valve, sorry, a 12 valve 6-cylinder inline in Europe, but in America you could only get this 24 valve unit, which is fortunate because it had a lot more horsepower. So this thing has about 221 horse, a little over 200 foot-pounds of torque, is considered to be a very, very good motor in terms of longevity. I mean, there's never really been a bad inline six in anything. It just hasn't. And they run pretty fantastically well. You can see, and this is one way you can tell low miles on one of these cars, there's still a residue of the white coating that they used on the exhaust manifolds, which inevitably eventually turned to rust. This one still has a lot of the white coating on it, which shows you that it just hasn't run as much as the ones that have over 100 on them. Also, the valve cover is in terrific shape, and these things are known to get aluminum corrosion over time, don't fit well. The Mercedes-Benz stuff fades away and doesn't look as nice, and this one, it does look all very nice under the hood, and that does, of course, help to attest to the low miles on the car. So truly a fantastic engine in this thing, made it do a bulletproof 5-speed automatic that shifts very well. It had a very funky wiper, and again, this was all, compare this to the 1989 model. It's just completely different. It has this articulated wiper, one of them only, not two, and as it spans the windshield, it shoots out to cover the entire thing in a very complex looking way. So it's just fascinating all around, and was a very advanced car for the time. You can see I'm not going to do this now. Oh, maybe I will. Again, this is just a quick review, but see, I'm pushing that guy here and a little bit of that. Let me go to this other side. I bet I'm doing this in the wrong direction. I am. Alright, so there it is. Go to this side now. And this is what classic Mercedes stuff was all about. So now this hood is what's called the in the service position, going straight up and down. And this is a continuation of Mercedes products that were designed for ease of maintenance and simplicity of, the mechanics love these things. Don't let a mechanic tell you he doesn't like working on a Mercedes and he has to charge you more. This thing's way easier than working on a Chevy, especially with stuff like this. So you can imagine the amount of freedom this gives you when working on the car under the hood. You don't bang your head on everything, have lots of room, and it's a very, very nice feature. And this is, I don't know if Mercedes still do this. I don't care if they do, because they still just are not the same as what they used to be. Okay, in the trunk, it's going to be very nicely finished. You've got a little whatever there, but nice blue carpet, everything looking good. You can see the bottom of the trunk is also carpeted, nicely finished, very interesting looking hinges. Under here, you get into the spare tire toolkit. If I wasn't one-handed, I'd start dicking with that, but a very nice sized trunk in these cars, unlike many modern convertibles. The soft top is stowed under this good-looking tonneau cover. This guy here is a roll bar that pops up, but we'll get into that in a minute. And in fact, we'll just get into the whole thing in a minute. What I'm going to do is get my crap inside, hang the tag from the back, and then we'll go for a spin. All right, I pulled it back here out of the sun so we could keep going. One of the things that I like about this particular model, and particularly the early R129s, is that they continue with so many of the traditionally Mercedes things that are cues that made the long-term Mercedes buyer comfortable. Whenever we sell one, a lot of guys go, oh, where's the gas release? Well, there isn't one. I mean, if the car is open, the gas door is open. You push at the front, and out it comes. And then you see a nice little cap with the Mercedes star. You have to use premium gas in these things. This right here is a vacuum-operated lock. So when the car is locked, it also locks the gas door. The ridge taillights, which are designed to, if it's snowy or if you're a chic in the desert and the whole car's covered with snow or sand or whatever, it builds up on the outer ridges rims and leaves the inner ridges free and clear. So even when the car is covered with crap, you can still see the taillights. And again, that is part of the Mercedes over-engineering. That's just such cool stuff. When you're looking at a low mileage car, this is the kind of stuff you want to see. You can see that the black trim is still inserted into that 300 SL badge under there. You know, on a car that's been through 800 car washes, that'll be long gone or chipped away or look terrible. And that is one of the cues you like to look for. I also have photos of the paint meter readings on this car on the website because it is all original, gleaming, and an original soft top. So I think that's all important stuff for the collector, and I want to make sure it's available to him. Even if this is a review channel, forgive me. With this particular car, I'm having a little bit of duality and a sales pitch on it, but I do like it personally so much that I feel justified in doing it. I do also like the dove gray cladding on the side, the contrasting cladding. That's something that went away in the later models. Okay, these seats were a first in Mercedes history in terms of, in any history. They were the first seats to have the seat belts actually built into them. The frame was solid enough to get away with that. And that is a nice feature in terms of when you move the seat forward, back, up, down, the seat belts go with it instead of being in a fixed position in the back. And that makes it more comfortable for the driver. The over-engineering of the skid plate, scuff plate, you know, whatever you want to call it down there with the big Mercedes-Benz logo and the chrome, all very nice stuff. Have a little map pocket inside the door, nice little place to put a H and K or some such. You've got this very attractive wood with the traditional Mercedes style seat switch that's very easy to use, including the headrests, which are historically power in these cars, and yeah, kind of neat. And you can see the way they also carry the seat belt with it. The two big speakers there, nice sound system in the car. You can see the wear or lack thereof on the pedals, again a testament to the low mileage on the car, and the rather beautiful leather sport seats, which, you know, they're all very nice stuff. No seats for the Canadians. They're not going to be chipper if you stuff them back there. They actually got nothing. So no seat belts, no cushions. I don't remember ever seeing any kind of a jump seat setup for a R129 like you could get on the previous SL. So you're on your own. You got one passenger in the car with you, and that's it. And then again, this is a pop-up roll bar, which we'll do when we hop in and give it a go. There's that bank vault door. Get the seatbelt on. You can see that has almost no wear. Very often you'll see those little plastic trim around the seatbelt get worn away from use. Get that in and fire it up. And there you see that Big 6 fires up quite nicely. Again, let me turn the air off for a minute. 221 horsepower. You know, not the M119 you could have got this with in the SL500 that had a crap load more horsepower. Frankly, yeah, would be more desirable, 4 valves per cylinder, 32 valve V8. But this does cut down on the maintenance, does marginally improve on the fuel mileage, and has some charms of its own. In fact, by being a much lighter engine, it does give this car a little bit more of a balance. So one could argue that the 300s do handle better. One could also say that the 300 SL is such a famous Mercedes-Benz nomenclature that it has some coolness of its own in that regard. You can see the steering wheel, nicely wrapped leather. The condition is stellar. It does have a power adjustment. Again, all new, nothing like this in the prior car. But it does still have that classic Mercedes headlight switch that, you know, a guy who'd been driving them for 30 years would recognize and be able to operate. You've got your city lights. You can turn on the lights on the left side of the car, the right side of the car. Here they're off. Here you've got your parking lamps. Here you've got your main headlamps. pull once for front fog lights, pull twice and you get a rear fog light. So pretty cool stuff all around. Also, the cruise control is where it had been for decades, as is the wiper switch. All of that meant to carry over the Mercedes feel to people who had owned them for many, many years. Up here, this was one of the failings of these cars, was how this plastic all would become brittle and chip off. It's a nice shape on this, not cracked, not replaced the way it came, and that's also a nice testament. Another thing Mercedes did is, this was silly as hell. When this car came out, it has a power activated center rear view mirror. Which, you know, seems like a neat idea because it's going to work with the memory seats, but nobody knows it has one. So everybody just grabbed these things and chucked them to wherever they wanted to be, and they just broke them, and that was it. So very, very few people, at least when you get into second and third owners, realize that this was power actuated, and you see a lot of these cars with broken center view mirrors. The instrument cluster, nice, all the you know, contrasting white and orange, 160 mile-an-hour speedo. There you see just 25,000 miles on the clock. You've got your outside temperature, you got your fuel, you got your vacuum operated miles per gallon meter, your economy meter, you got your water temp, your oil pressure, you've got your tach and your clock, and then a series of German hieroglyphic warning lights underneath. You also had twin airbags in this car, something you didn't have in the prior version. It just had one for the driver. You've got a neat little spot here that would have been for a built-in cellular phone if you had opted for that. You know, that was great at the time, but of course it's long since become obsolete, so it's silly to have. So it's nice to see that it's got this little compartment where you can put your little guns or your narcotics or switchblades or any other sort of little thing you want to hide from the state troopers. The early climate control, you know, I think I prefer the later one better, but this is fine. I don't know why the automatic button needs to be that enormous, but it is. Not thrilled that they replaced the factory Becker with this Alpine unit, even if it is a very expensive looking period correct Alpine that does have an interesting tilt forward CD insert and stuff. It sounds pretty good. But frankly, if I owned this car, I'd probably go back to the Becker. And if you're going to replace the Becker, which is this big stupid radio with a lot of indecipherable buttons, why pick a replacement radio that's big and stupid with a lot of indecipherable buttons? It just doesn't make sense. This is the defrost for when the hardtop is in place, hazard switch, antenna, and here's that roll bar I promised you I'd show. So you press that, up it comes, and now you can drive around if you want with what looks like a nice little factory roll bar. More importantly, this is part of the airbag SRS system. If the car senses that it's about to flip over, there's too much body flex, whatever's going on, that thing will ratchet up in like less than a second to give you rollover protection, and was one of the first convertibles to do so. The sun visors, they also sort of display that they're in pretty good shape for their age. They you know, aren't all crinkled up and smashed and look pretty good. So you know, again, just a very nice, well-preserved example. Here's the mirror switch, left, right, center, sorry, left, center, right. I'm telling you, too much coronavirus whiskey this morning. And what appears to be an ashtray but isn't, is actually just another nice little spot to put your little bag of drugs. You can roll these little guys back. That gives you cassette storage if you still have cassettes, and there is your ashtray. This center console, if you pull that button, God, I'm sweating this morning, that's gross, sorry, whoever buys it. You can flip this little lid forward to give yourself a different elbow setup, and you can, this is hard one-handed, mind you. And then there's a nice little center console down there that you would have lost if it had a phone, so nice to see. And there's two more compartments on the bottom back there. Get a little bit of air going. Turn the fan down so I can be chilly this morning. Let me run the top up. To do that, you push forward on this square button. Lights up red. Up goes the tonneau cover. Up goes the top. And again, this is pretty normal looking now, but in 1990 it was unbelievable. Nobody had anything like this. Down goes the tonneau. And down goes the back. Keep your finger on the button and the windows will roll up. There we go. And I'll do a quick little walk around so you can see it with the top on. So there it is, a nice blue soft top, matches the leather interior of the car. It is the original Mercedes soft top, looks terrific, and if you want, you can stow that and put the original factory hard top on, which we'll have some photos of that in the ad. Anyway, let's go for a spin. Even on 2, that's a little bit heavy. It's probably giving me wind noise. Shifter in D. You can see if you want, there's a little switch there, and that's the only way you're ever going to get this car to start in first, is by clicking over and going down there, and then that car will start in first. If you leave it in the normal position, for fuel efficiency and for smoothness, it's going to leave the lights in second gear. And that is also an historical Mercedes thing. So I'm not going to torture everyone by having them wait for the gate. I'll pause it now. We'll pick it up again at the end of the road. All right, away we go. I can't really pin the dirty windshield on Dalton this morning. There were plenty of bugs out there this morning that just seemed to attack this car. You go, winding out that 6 a little bit. You know, again, with the 6, this thing isn't a rocket ship, but it's more than respectable. 220 horsepower isn't bad. It's as much as an 84 Corvette had with a fuel injection. Oh, we got the door open. That's wonderful. There we go. You know, and it's unbelievable driving such a well-preserved example of this 30-plus-year-old car, because you do get to feel what it was like to own one when they were new. And I could only imagine, you know, a guy going in with his, you know, 79 450 SL, parking in the Mercedes parking lot, hopping in this thing and driving it around. It must have felt like you got in a spaceship. I mean, it's just that much more advanced than the prior model. In terms of everything, in terms of the 124 suspension that it robbed from is fantastic, and of course tweaked for handling for an SL Roadster. It just must have felt amazing. You can see the solidity of the steering wheel. There's not so much as a shudder from it. It's perfect. Nice smooth feel from the gas pedal. Lovely feel from the anti-lock brakes. The thing just feels absolutely terrific going down the road. A real grand touring car, albeit with 2 seats. So, but what a nice way to, you know, to run from one town to the other on the Autobahn or wherever you're going to go, and feel very, very smooth at 100 plus miles per hour. So, boy, that's a dumb name. And that truck, is that the stupidest name I saw that truck the other day. It's a wine. I don't know. I don't get the whole wine thing. You know, the way they, you know, the Chateau Libido, I get that. You know, shall we unscrew the cap? But Yes Way Rosé, I don't know. Just seems a little bit silly to me. Anyway, I'm not going to ramble on in traffic. I'm going to pause it and pick it up again when we finally turn left or turn right up there. Bear with me a minute. So you can see getting into those 24 valves, it does pick it up. They did have a badged unit called the 300 SL24, which had a manual gearbox, but you're not going to find too many of those around, and they're a fortune if you do find them. Same motor, but a manual. It has a recirculating ball steering, which is classic Mercedes. I love the feel of it. They did change that down the road in other cars to the rack and pinion, which is more modern and more responsive. It doesn't have the same heavyweight feeling of the recirculating ball, but that's also what I think gave these vintage Mercedes cars some of their substantial feel, and I really like it. You can dissect traffic. It is very responsive and does have nice throttle response as well. So it's just a terrific driver, and it's a classic car that you can comfortably hop in and drive from New York to California and get out feeling like you're pretty refreshed. I mean, you get in a '69 Camaro, you drive it to the next town over and you need a chiropractor. So there's something nice about classic cars becoming classic cars that are extremely comfortable with cold air conditioning, and even safety features like airbags and roll bars that do make it not such a weird thing to drive in modern traffic. Not to mention the power and the ability to outbrake and get in and out of traffic. This is truly a classic car that has the performance of a modern car, and that is another one of the things that makes it pretty neat. So anyway, thank you for having a look. This one is available at Auto House of Naples. You can check it out at autohousenaples.com on the web, or give them a call, 239-263-8500. I'm still, scrabbling together some cars to do. I'm having a hard time getting Patrick going with that G8, but I will. The Monte Carlo, I promise, is on the way, as is a Toronado, and at some stage soon we'll get all of them going. I do have a little race at Sebring this weekend, so that's going to get in the way maybe a little bit as I prepare to get the... I crashed in the last race and lazily haven't done anything, so now I'm scrabbling to get everything together for this race this weekend, and that's taken up some of my time. But anyway, thank you for having a look. Hopefully, I haven't checked, but I think this video might be a little bit more accessible to someone who doesn't want to spend an hour watching one, and we will continue with the next one. So thank you very much. Take care, and we'll see you soon.